Good evening, everyone. I want to talk about something we don't always like to face. The kind of person who walks into a room and seems just fine, charming even, but leaves behind confusion, pain, and destruction. The kind of person who takes but never gives, who deceives but never apologizes, who manipulates but never cares. When we think of evil, we often imagine something obvious, something loud, aggressive, and unmistakably sinister. We picture villains from movies, the kind with sharp grins and menacing stares, making their intentions known from the very beginning. But in real life, evil is rarely that easy to spot. True evil doesn't announce itself. It doesn't stomp into the room with a flashing red warning sign. Instead, it often enters quietly, wrapped in charm, wearing a smile, speaking the right words at the right time. It doesn't push people away, it draws them in, makes them feel special, seen, and understood until the mask starts to slip. This is the kind of evil that's most dangerous, the one that looks like kindness at first, the one that makes you doubt your own instincts. It's the person who flatters you just enough to lower your guard, who listens to your fears only to use them against you later, who showers you with affection when you're useful but turns cold when you're not. The reason this kind of evil is so effective is that it doesn't come in forcefully, it comes in slowly, subtly. It builds trust first. It makes you feel safe, and by the time you realize that something is wrong, you're already caught in its web. That's why we can't rely on surface appearances alone. We have to look deeper, past the charm, past the charisma, and into the patterns of behavior. Does this person's kindness extend beyond situations that benefit them? Do their actions align with their words? Do they make you feel valued, or do they make you feel used? Evil isn't always loud. In fact, the most dangerous kind of evil is often the one that knows how to blend in. It knows how to make you doubt your instincts, how to make you question yourself instead of questioning it. But the moment we learn to recognize that charm can be a tool just as much as it can be a quality, we take away its power. We start seeing through the act, and most importantly, we learn to protect ourselves before the damage is done. There's a pattern to people who only live for themselves. They move through life like a storm, taking what they need, using who they can, and leaving behind nothing but wreckage. At first glance, they may seem successful, confident, even admirable, but if you look closely, you'll see the trail of damage they leave behind. Broken relationships, betrayed trust, and people who are left questioning their own worth. A self-serving person doesn't build, they consume. They don't invest in others, they extract from them. Their love, their kindness, their generosity, if they show any at all, is conditional. It's a transaction, not a gift. They will be there for you when it benefits them, but the moment you need something back, they are suddenly too busy, too burdened, or simply gone. What makes these people so destructive is that they don't think about the consequences of their actions. They don't pause to consider how their choices affect others. Their world revolves around their needs, their desires, their comfort. And if getting what they want means hurting someone else, that's not their problem. They leave behind friends who feel betrayed, partners who feel drained, colleagues who feel used, families who feel abandoned. And because they often mask their self-serving nature behind charm and manipulation, people don't always realize the damage until it's too late. If you've ever been in the orbit of someone like this, you know the exhaustion of constantly trying to meet their expectations, only to realize they never intended to do the same for you. You know what it's like to give and give, hoping that maybe this time they'll appreciate it, only to be left feeling empty. The worst part, they rarely look back. They don't feel guilt. They don't try to fix what they've broken. Instead, they simply move on to the next person, the next situation, the next opportunity, continuing their cycle without a second thought. The good news is that we don't have to be part of their destruction. We can choose to step away. We can recognize the signs before we get caught in the storm. And most importantly, we can remind ourselves that real relationships, whether in love, friendship, or work, aren't one-sided. They aren't about taking. They are about giving, growing, and supporting each other. Self-serving people may leave destruction in their wake, but we don't have to be part of the wreckage. We can choose better. We can choose people who build, not break. And in doing so, we can create lives that are not just about survival, but about true, meaningful connection. We live in a world that often confuses power with strength. We're taught that the strongest people are the ones who lead, dominate, and command, that strength means having control over people, over situations, over outcomes. But real strength isn't found in control, it's found in connection. A truly strong person doesn't need to manipulate others to feel important. They don't have to force obedience or instill fear to gain respect. They don't rely on intimidation, mind games, or silent treatments to keep people in their orbit. Instead, they lead with trust. They build relationships through honesty, through vulnerability, through the willingness to listen and understand. The need for control comes from fear. Fear of losing power, fear of being exposed, fear of not being enough. People who crave control often feel deeply insecure, even if they never show it. They believe that if they don't hold the reins tightly, they will be left behind, forgotten, or taken advantage of. So they manipulate, they dominate, they do whatever it takes to keep things and people under their thumb. But control is a fragile thing. It demands constant effort. It creates relationships built on fear, not respect. And in the end, it isolates the person who wields it. Because people don't stay in controlled relationships out of love or admiration. They stay out of obligation, fear, or exhaustion. And the moment they find a way out, they leave. Connection, on the other hand, is built on mutual trust. It's about knowing that we don't have to force people to stay in our lives. They choose to, not because they fear what will happen if they leave, but because they feel valued, respected, and understood. True strength is the ability to admit when we're wrong. It's the willingness to listen instead of dictate. It's being secure enough in ourselves that we don't have to control others to feel important. It's having the courage to be open, to be vulnerable, to let people in without needing to hold power over them. When we choose connection over control, we build relationships that last. We create spaces where people feel safe, where they can grow, where love and respect are freely given, not demanded. And in the end, that kind of strength, the kind that lifts people up instead of holding them down, is the only kind that truly matters. There's a voice inside all of us, a quiet but persistent whisper that tries to warn us when something isn't right. It's that uneasy feeling in your stomach when someone's words don't quite match their actions. It's the hesitation before responding to a text from someone who has hurt you before. It's the sense of relief you feel when a certain person leaves the room, even if you can't fully explain why. That voice is our instinct, our intuition, and too often we ignore it. Why? Because we want to believe the best in people. We tell ourselves that we're being too judgmental, too sensitive, too untrusting. We rationalize bad behavior, making excuses for why someone hurt us or why they keep crossing boundaries. We convince ourselves that if we just give them one more chance, they'll change. But the truth is, people show us who they are all the time. The problem is, we don't always want to see it. How many times have we looked back and said, I knew something was off? How often have we ignored the small red flags, only to realize later they were warnings we should have heeded? Our instincts are powerful, but they can only protect us if we listen to them. When someone consistently lies, manipulates, or disrespects us, it's not an accident. It's not a misunderstanding, it's a pattern. And patterns tell us far more about a person's character than their words ever could. Trusting our instincts doesn't mean assuming the worst in everyone. It doesn't mean living in paranoia or shutting people out. It simply means paying attention. It means honoring that feeling in our gut when something feels off. It means recognizing that our discomfort is valid, even when we can't immediately explain it. The strongest relationships, whether friendships, partnerships, or family bonds, are built on trust, mutual respect, and consistency. When those things are missing, our instincts will tell us, and the sooner we listen, the sooner we can protect ourselves from people who do not have our best interests at heart. We don't need to wait for undeniable proof to walk away from situations that feel wrong. We don't need permission to protect our peace. We just need to trust what we already know deep down. When people show us who they really are, it's up to us to believe them. Evil doesn't always come with a warning label. It doesn't always look like the villain in a story, dressed in black, speaking in a threatening tone. More often than not, it comes wrapped in charm, disguised as kindness, hidden beneath good intentions. It is subtle, calculated, and deeply manipulative. And that is exactly why recognizing it is so difficult, but also so important. The truth is, many of us have encountered evil in our lives without realizing it at first. We have trusted people who had no intention of protecting our well-being. We have given second chances to those who never deserved the first one. We have ignored red flags, excused bad behavior, and convinced ourselves that we were imagining things, all because we didn't want to believe that someone could truly be that selfish, that deceptive, that cruel. But the first step to protecting ourselves is seeing evil for what it really is. Not what we wish it was, not what we hope it will become, but what it is. Evil has patterns. Evil is not just a single bad act. It is a repeated pattern of behavior. A person who constantly manipulates, deceives, and harms others without remorse is not just having a bad day. That is who they are. When we recognize those patterns early, we give ourselves the power to walk away before the damage becomes too great. Evil thrives in denial. One of the most dangerous things we can do is refuse to see the truth about someone. We tell ourselves that we are overreacting, that they didn't mean to hurt us, that if we just love them harder, support them more, or give them another chance, they will change. But the reality is, a person who chooses to harm others, whether through lies, control, manipulation, or cruelty, will not suddenly wake up one day and become kind. They will not change unless they want to, and most don't. Evil doesn't need us to believe in it. It only needs us to ignore it, to pretend it's not there, to stay silent, to let it continue without challenge. That's how it wins. Recognizing evil helps us reclaim our power. When we see evil for what it is, we stop engaging with it. We stop trying to reason with it, to fix it, to explain ourselves to it. We stop expecting it to change. Instead, we set boundaries. We distance ourselves. We make choices that protect our peace, our energy, and our hearts. It is not our job to change an evil person. It is our job to recognize them and remove them from our lives. We deserve better. The moment we stop excusing evil is the moment we start protecting ourselves. We are not weak for walking away. We are not cold for setting boundaries. We are not unforgiving for refusing to tolerate mistreatment. We are simply choosing to live in truth rather than in the illusion that someone will one day become the person we hoped they were. Recognizing evil is not about living in fear. It is about living in awareness. And once we have that awareness, we no longer have to be victims of it. We can choose better. We can choose ourselves. We can choose a life free from the weight of someone else's darkness. And that is real strength. Evil is not always obvious. It doesn't always look like danger. Sometimes it looks like charm. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it looks like everything we ever wanted until it reveals itself for what it truly is. And by the time we see it, we're often already caught in its web. But here's the truth. We are not powerless. We do not have to stay in spaces that drain us. We do not have to keep giving chances to people who have shown us time and time again that they do not care. We do not have to explain ourselves to those who refuse to hear us. What we do have to do is trust ourselves. Trust that feeling in our gut that tells us when something isn't right. Trust that we are not being too sensitive, too dramatic, or too unforgiving for walking away from what harms us. Trust that we deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and love, not control, manipulation, and deceit. Recognizing evil is the first step. The next step, choosing to remove it from our lives. Choosing to protect our peace, our hearts, and our well-being. Choosing to surround ourselves with people who lift us up, not tear us down. Because at the end of the day, real strength is not found in controlling others or in allowing ourselves to be controlled. Real strength is in connection, in truth, in the courage to stand firm in who we are and to walk away from anything or anyone that threatens that. We deserve better, and we owe it to ourselves to choose it every single time. Evil doesn't always come crashing into our lives like a storm. It often creeps in quietly, disguised as something familiar, something safe. It doesn't immediately show its true colors. Instead, it tests the waters, seeing how much it can get away with, how far it can push before we react. And too often, we don't recognize it until we are already caught in its web. That's why recognizing evil is the first and most important step in protecting ourselves. It's not about paranoia or assuming the worst in people. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that some individuals don't just make mistakes. They manipulate, they deceive, and they harm without remorse. And the longer we ignore that reality, the more power they have over us. Evil wears many masks. One of the reasons recognizing evil is so difficult is that it doesn't always look the way we expect. We imagine evil as loud, aggressive, or unmistakably cruel. But in reality, it can be subtle, it can be wrapped in charm and affection, even in acts of kindness, when they serve a selfish purpose. Some people use flattery to gain trust, guilt to maintain control, and manipulation to keep us second-guessing ourselves. The key to recognizing evil isn't just looking at how someone acts, it's looking at patterns. Does this person only show kindness when they need something? Do they twist the truth when they're caught? Do they disregard our feelings, dismiss our concerns, or make us feel like we're the problem when we stand up for ourselves? True character is revealed over time, and paying attention to these patterns can help us see people for who they really are. Why we struggle to see it, many of us are taught to give people the benefit of the doubt, to be kind, to be forgiving. And while those are valuable qualities, they can also be exploited. We tell ourselves that we're being too harsh, too judgmental. We excuse bad behavior because we don't want to believe that someone we care about could intentionally hurt us. But the hard truth is this: some people will take advantage of our kindness. Some people will continue to cross boundaries as long as we let them. And the longer we rationalize their behavior, the more power they gain over our lives. Setting boundaries is how we take back our power. Once we recognize evil, the next step is protecting ourselves from it. That's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not about punishing someone else. They're about honoring ourselves. They're about deciding what we will and will not tolerate, what energy we allow into our space, and what kind of treatment we accept in our relationships. Boundaries sound like, I will not engage in conversations where I am being disrespected. I will not engage in conversations where I am being disrespected. If you continue to lie to me, I will not be part of your life. I don't owe anyone access to me if they continuously harm me. The hardest part about setting boundaries is enforcing them. Because when we finally stand up for ourselves, people who benefited from our silence will push back. They will call us selfish, dramatic, or unforgiving. But that's just another form of manipulation, an attempt to keep us in a cycle where they have control. Choosing ourselves over toxicity, the moment we start recognizing evil for what it is, we stop engaging with it. We stop explaining ourselves to people who refuse to listen. We stop hoping that they will change. Instead, we start prioritizing our peace, our mental health, and our well-being. And that is real power. That is how we protect ourselves, not by waiting for someone to become better, but by recognizing when they won't and choosing to walk away. We are not obligated to tolerate mistreatment just because we once cared for someone. We are allowed to say enough. We are allowed to close doors that lead to nothing but pain. We are allowed to choose peace over chaos, truth over deception, and freedom over control. Because at the end of the day, recognizing evil is not just about avoiding harm. It's about reclaiming our own strength. And once we do that, no one can take it away from us. There's a moment in every difficult relationship, every toxic situation where we feel stuck, trapped between what we know in our hearts and what we fear will happen if we take action. We ask ourselves, what if I walk away and regret it? What if I leave and things finally get better? What if I'm wrong about this person? And that fear of making the wrong decision, of hurting someone else, of starting over, is what keeps us holding on longer than we should. It's what convinces us to keep giving chances to people who have already shown us who they are. It's what keeps us tolerating behavior we never should have accepted in the first place. But here's the truth, we are not powerless. We never were. The illusion of powerlessness. When we are caught in toxic cycles with manipulative partners, self-serving friends, controlling family members, we start to believe that we have no choice. We tell ourselves that leaving isn't an option, that we're too invested, that we've already given too much. And sometimes the people around us reinforce that belief. You'll never find someone else who will love you. No one else will tolerate you the way I do. This is just how things are. You have to accept it. These are the words of people who want to keep us small, who want to keep us doubting ourselves. Because as long as we believe we have no choice, we will stay. We will keep showing up. We will keep giving more of ourselves while receiving nothing in return. But the reality is we always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it. Walking away is not weakness, it's strength. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that leaving is a sign of failure, that endurance is the mark of strength, that if we just try hard enough, love hard enough, give more, we can fix even the most broken relationships. But strength is not about staying in spaces that diminish us. Strength is about recognizing when something is hurting us and having the courage to walk away. Strength is about knowing our worth, not in theory, but in practice. Not just believing we deserve better, but actually choosing it. Walking away is not quitting, it is not giving up. It is choosing ourselves over a situation that no longer serves us. And that is one of the most powerful decisions we can ever make.